Okay, today we're going to be making a terrarium. My wife was at a store. So using a straight edge, you don't have to have a carpenter square like I have here, but you can use any straight edge to connect the lines. We have our isosceles hexagon now all drawn out and ready to be cut so that we can take it to the glass manufacturer. So all I do is connect those sides there. When we get back into the shed, we're going to have to make a wooden frame to kind of hold the glass base and then keep the sides in there. And the way you're going to set that, you see that the angle of the open angle is approximately 60 degrees, and so to make one side of that, we'll just set the miter. It's back to our compass because I've already measured it at the distance of the base. So I know that's going to be the same. I don't have to remeasure. Being consistent is going to be helpful when we have to piece all these together. So we're going to make a little mark on the paper to start, and we're going to start with just a straight line. I made the straight line on one side, and on the other side I'm just going to go down here and very carefully find the point that I made in the paper. You can't see that, but there's a point there from the nail. And then I'm going to draw a straight line. This time the carpenter square came in handy because I do want to make a straight line, and to make that bottom square I just aligned it with the edge of the poster board, which I'm assuming is a manufacturer cut, so that I'm going to guess is reasonably square. So now I'm going to make that line. I now have a 10.5 inch square line, and I am going to measure the exact center of that, which would be 10 1/4 inches. I'm going to make a mark right on that line at 10 1/4. I've got my straight line, and now I'm going to make a center measurement at 5 1/4 inches, which is exactly half of my base at 10.5 inches. I'm going to make that point, and then we're going to start at the top. Again, using the carpenter square, all I got to do is put that edge on the middle mark. Now, remember, you got to make that square, so when you're using your T-square or your carpenter square, you got to take some care into how that's going to line up, and you'll have a nice even side. Again, we've got 6 sides that have to go together, so being as precise as you can make on this is going to make your project that much better. I've arbitrarily selected a height of 18 inches, and therefore the straight line in the middle represents the approximate height of the terrarium. Interestingly, the professor at St. Joe's University, when I asked her about this project, she made this line 18 1/8 inches because when you angle in the glass, like you see here, hi Luna, it's actually going to reduce the height. So being a mathematician and a PhD, she calculated using fancy math the exact height of the center that it would need to be after it's tilted in, with a finished height of 18 inches. I love mathematicians. Luna had a piece of my sandwich, and now she's giving herself a bath. Okay, the next thing we need to do is we need to make a vertical line using our T-square again, going across the top, and that again is going to be arbitrary. So I want that to be, let's just guess 6 1/4, because when they line up, that is going to give me the somewhat of an opening, and I'm assuming that 6 1/4 inches is going to be enough for a hand to get in there. It won't have opening sides like this nifty little terrarium does, but again, we should be able to get to the top of that. So, with the line at the top there paralleled, and Luna checking everything out to make sure it's parallel. Luna, thank you for that. Could you please not eat any more of my sandwich? Thank you. Goodbye. I want 6 1/2 to be the open top, and to get that, again, we took sorry for the focus, I'm not sure why it's not going. Half of 6 1/2, 3 1/4, so on this side it'll be 0, in the middle will be 3 1/4, and on the end it'll be the 6 1/2 mark on the ruler. I have my templates cut out, which I can then give to our glass cutter. I would stay away from home centers They're only going to have thickness of glass relative to picture frames and maybe light fixtures. So try and find a professional glass cutter. We're going to get one of these, and we're going to get 7 of these. Even though we only need 6, we're going to have 1 spare, wrapped up in a piece of paper, and put up in the attic. Okay, Luna, out to the shed. You can't help there. Thanks to my buddies over here at Burhan's Glass in King of Prussia, we spent about $200, and I got some panes here. I got an extra one, and looks like the guys did a nice job with the trapezoid pattern. Good thing to do is ask them to sand and round the edges. That'll make nice for the gluing process. Okay, next up is to make a hexagonal base. I got some wood stock. Came over here and I set my chop box to 30 degrees. Hopefully you can see that in there, 30 degrees. And then you measure the base and you make a cut like so for one, make a cut for the other one, and then they all start to piece together. Let's see what happens. Tired of holding the camera, so I'm making a poor man's tripod so I can show you the finished base. And then on to the sides. So I got the base all together, and I got my octagon glass inside there. I'll put a little stain on there and make it look pretty for my wife. I figured that the base had some imperfections, so when I took my measurements, I went per side and measured each one individually. I made a mistake when I didn't actually put a little notch on one side of the glass and one side of the wood, so that when I assembled the wood, the glass fit as perfectly as it did when I made the frame. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and I couldn't quite get it right. So the rubber mallet here and a little bit of Vaseline came in. I had to kind of notch some sides out because the glass didn't quite fit on these hard edges here. So I was only off by maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and then with a little bit of patience and some light tapping, I got it to fit in there. The base of this, it wouldn't hold if I didn't have some kind of bottom on there. So at the lumber store again, I got a nice piece of wood, traced out the wooden frame, and then used small little brad nails and glue to hold it in place. So that's going to be just an unfinished surface. I think for the terrarium part of this, the actual base being glass is going to be good for the humidity that the plants in the water will naturally need to have to survive. So that's where we're at with right now. Okay. Here's my idea. I've got 2 panes of glass, and I'm going to put them in the bottom there. See, they don't, when I leave them together, they kind of meet. And so once they kind of meet, I've got enough room for a piece of glue, which I got at the local craft store. They say that the glass bead is pretty good. I've got another one here from someone on YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. It says that this brand, E600, is also pretty good, although it says flexible, so I'm not sure that I want this to flex. Now the other thing, got to keep in mind, I saw some videos on putting glass together, and the guy heated the edge, which is probably not a bad idea. It's about 65 degrees out today. I might go get my hair dryer and just heat that edge before I put the bead glue on there. But this is really not going to support any weight. It's going to be housing basically just plants. And hopefully the base will be heavy enough with the soil, the sand, the charcoal, and the rocks that it won't, the cat won't be able to jump up and bang it over. But being prudent as I am, I did buy an extra piece of glass, so that if there one does break, either in the process or throughout the course of our years in our home, then I can maybe replace it. So the other thing I thought to be a binder might be a piece of bare copper. This is actually for the base. I'm going to drop it inside there. And I got this from, again, my local electrical supply house, who I happen to be friends with, the guys over in King of Prussia, Colonial Electric Supply. Hooked me up with some Bayer number 6 copper, not too bad. Just kind of measured it out. And this is going to be kind of tricky how to get this in there. I'm going to have to cut that down and measure that. But I wanted to start with a long length. So when I get done with this, hopefully this will glue in there and act to help bind these two pieces of glass together without too much difficulty. I think I'm going to probably have to set something heavy on the inside here and here. I'm going to start with two sides and get them up and then kind of work my way around. And I actually have some temporary Gorilla Glue clear tape. I'm going to try that right at the top here so I can't see if I can't get them to stay. I'll tape that on the inside, which will give me a nice, fairly stable, I'll probably do the bottoms too, stable surface so that I can then use two hands, glue that down, and get this copper piece to somehow set in there like that. And again, patience is probably going to be a virtue with this project since I don't think this has ever been tried before, but I'm assuming that I'll have some luck and I'll have some tunes going on, and I'll let you know how it's going. So that's going to be the basics of that. Again, I'll have to cut this down, but this will feed in the bottom there, and then I'll add some support at the bottom. And then I got some clear silicone here. I'm going to take that, once I get done on the glass, I'm going to bead that all around the edges here and make a nice tight seal, a watertight seal. And again, hopefully that'll add some strength in there. The goal is to keep the glass as clean as possible and as clear as possible when I get done, so that when we put it on the foyer table there, we'll actually be able to see the cool plants on the inside, and maybe some rocks and maybe some interesting other features. I've been looking at terrariums, and seems like you can put all sorts of things in there. I actually have a nice piece of driftwood and some stones that my wife my wife found this on the beach in Canada on our 20th anniversary, so it's been sitting in our windowsill doing nothing, but I think that'll be looking nice inside our terrarium, and put that in there, something like that, or it might elevate somehow. Tucked into a corner like that. There's all kinds of things we get to play around with. I want to make sure I clean this up a little bit and give it some features, but I'm not sure what side is going to be the best side. But anyway, so that'll get us started, and like I said, hopefully this won't come crashing down on my head, and I won't have to go spend another couple $100 on glass. Check back with you later. Sides came up pretty good. I'm using I decided not to go with the Gorilla Glue tape. I was afraid it would not come off nicely, but I've got some painter's tape on there. I started fooling around with what the inside could start to look like, some driftwood and all. I do have this little problem here. This is didn't quite line up the way I thought it would. So it's funny, I have one perfect side over here. The other sides are also pretty good, but then I've got this gap that I'm going to have to do something with. I think what I'll do is I'll make a small dot down here with my Sharpie, and then up there, and then take it over to the local hardware store and see if they can't cut that angle down for me. And then I'll have 6 apparently equal sides, even though they won't be actually equal. But hey, that's life in the home projects world. So we'll keep on going. Hardware store guys did a great job of cutting this down for me. I got a very jagged edge there, and I got to sand that down a little bit, and we had some left over there. I'm thinking I can sand that or feather that down just enough to make that fit and that work. So we are going back into the terrarium. And now the finished terrarium is on display. Here we have our glasses came out. I took a piece of driftwood and decided to add some copper decoration around that to kind of highlight the copper sides here. We have our big tree in the middle. Don't forget your charcoal for your bottom. Thanks again to Terrarium, who helped us select these things. Some rocks from our backyard, and even a little holiday treat. So, happy Halloween.